I honestly almost blew my stack. That's not okay, because when we are familiar with one another, sometimes we just forget that there are actual boundaries, because the childish stuff needs to just stop. Hi, everyone. I'm Crystal McDaniel, and this is The Naked Singer. Today, we're going to be discussing something that I don't think it gets discussed a whole lot anymore. Our culture has moved on and progressed, and for some reason, we seem to feel like these things, it's okay to leave them out when it's really not okay to leave them out. So we're going to be talking today about etiquette, manners, kindness, what it is to be polite, and how to have common courtesy. And I'm going to base this around two scriptures. One is Galatians 5:22, which is, "But the fruit of the Spirit is love, joy, peace, forbearance, kindness, goodness, faithfulness, gentleness, and self-control." And the other scripture is Matthew chapter 7, verse 12. "So in everything, do unto others as you would have them do unto you." And I've mentioned that particular verse in a couple of other podcasts because I think it's something that we need to keep in mind all the time. I think many times we leave it out. And one of the reasons the idea came to me to have this particular podcast was because my friend CJ White, who owns a business here in town, it's a little sweet shop bakery, and it's called the Dessert Bar. They've just changed their name from one name to the Dessert Bar. CJ and his crew do a wonderful job there, and they can do all kinds of things. And sometimes they have little special meals, and also you can contact CJ because I'm giving him a shout out right here. But this is something that was his idea in order for me to do this particular podcast. He had a situation that he was in that was very uncomfortable. And so he said, "Crystal, I would like to hear your opinion on The Naked Singer about this subject matter." So CJ, I'm about to give my opinion on this particular subject matter. So thank you for the idea. And if any of you guys actually have ideas that you would like to hear talked about here on The Naked Singer, you can always DM me on Instagram at Naked Singer Blog, or you can put a comment at the Naked Singer Blog, or you can go to our Facebook. We have a Facebook page that is the Naked Singer Blog there, and you can comment there, or you can send me a private message through that. And I am more than happy to hear your ideas on things that you would like and topics that you would like for me to talk about here on The Naked Singer. But today we're talking about etiquette and manners and just plain out common courtesy. It's something that I really believe is left out. When I was growing up, I was really taught a lot of etiquette and manners, and that was a big deal in our household. My mother was big on manners. She taught us to say please and thank you and excuse me. And I actually taught a little song to my children when they were growing up that says, "Please don't forget to say please. Thank you for saying thank you. Excuse me are two nice words too." So that was something that we constantly sang when my children were around the house when they were small, to remind them that we need to remember just common courtesy words. So that's something that seems to be left out. How to set a good table, how to greet one another, what is good decorum and what is bad decorum, because there is good decorum and bad decorum in professional settings. And we seem to have lost that. We seem to have lost the ability to dress well when we go to a dinner at a nice restaurant, or the ability to dress well when we go to the theater or to a movie or to really great events like weddings, funerals. We seem to be losing the teaching of how to actually interact with one another. Now, I'm saying this, and as I'm saying this, I'm thinking about something that I read recently that really stood out to me, because when we use etiquette, when we use manners, when we become polite and we are courteous to one another and we show kindness. Now, I know that everybody says don't forget to be kind, and it's become sort of cliche, but we're not talking about just these random words that are out there. We are talking about kindness in a way that the scripture actually talks about, because that's one of the fruit of the Spirit. When the Spirit lives in you, then you have the ability to develop these characteristics within yourself, because in my faith, these characteristics of the fruit of the Spirit are actually the personality traits of Jesus himself. So this is how he went about talking and treating others. And in something I read the other day, it really made me think about how etiquette affects all of us, how manners affect all of us, because the reason that we have them in the first place, it's not to stifle people's personality or to make you conform. It is actually to give everyone a common ground, everyone a way to feel comfortable, and everyone to have a common language, because we don't all have common languages. But if we can at least have kindness, gentleness, self-control in common, then we have a way to actually communicate. Etiquette helps us with that. When we dress well, it shows respect for ourselves, but it also shows respect for the establishment. When I'm saying establishment, I'm not talking about the government. I'm talking about just the place that you go, whether it be a restaurant or whether it be someone's home. It shows respect for where you are and what you are doing at the time. We spend so much time on our phones that we don't even pay attention to the fact that we need to have an etiquette even about our phones. Go out and actually connect with another person. If you are out for coffee or you are out for dinner at a nice place, turn your phone off, put it in your purse, or put it in your pocket. You don't need to be on the phone while you are communicating and at dinner with somebody else. So there are these things that are going on, and this gives us a common connection and a common way to talk to one another. When we have that common language, it helps us to be able to read all the way to the heart. It makes a difference all the way to someone else's heart and to our own hearts. It makes that big of a difference, and it touches our hearts, and therefore it moves us. That's something that we need to think about when we are using a common courtesy language, whether it be to open the door for someone, or whether it be to help them load their groceries in the car, or whether it is to make contact with the cashier in front of you and say, thank you. I hope you're having a wonderful day. You look great today. You're doing a good job. All of those things go to actually encourage a person, and that common language goes straight to your heart and straight to their heart. And then we can actually care for one another in the way that we need to care, to teach our children to say, excuse me, to teach our children to say thank you and please, to teach our children to open the door for someone else or to offer their seat to someone who is elderly that needs to sit down, to teach our children how to dress in certain situations. When I was growing up, my grandparents took me out on my birthday every single year. And we went to a really fancy restaurant and they taught me the etiquette of how to act and how to dress and how to speak and how to handle all the many, many, many utensils that were on the table and the courses that came by, because they wanted me to understand how to be able to deal in high-end, fancy situations and be able to talk to the common person at the exact same time. And I am so grateful for that lesson. My mom always set a formal holiday table. And so I have taught my children to do the exact same thing. And that courtesy helps them, and it goes a long, long way to be able to help them be helpful to other people and successful in their own lives. Believe it or not, these are all things that you need to succeed. So if you're a singer and knowing these things, there are a lot of after parties that happen after shows. And if you are a performer, a lot of times your contract requires you to be at these after parties for these donors who are very accustomed to being in situations that are extremely high end, and they have a certain etiquette and a certain decorum that they are used to and accustomed to. And if you don't know those particular skills, if you don't have them and you haven't honed them, it's going to be difficult for you. It's going to be very awkward and very difficult for you, because you need to be able to function in those situations as well. And a lot of people are like, why can't I just be myself? You can be yourself. But in order to have the common language that you need among others, you need to be able to know how to do these things. My grandmother had a saying that she used all the time. She said, children are reared, chickens are raised, and everybody else is yanked up by the hair of their head. So pretty much she's saying that children, when you rear a child, you are teaching them all the tools that they need to be able to be someone of refinement and someone who can speak well and someone who knows how to dress and someone who knows how to be polite in society. Now, I understand that there are people that have great economic hardships. That's not saying that you have to have the money to go out and be able to buy all these fancy clothes or anything. I mean, I wasn't able to do that because my family actually was very poor. But I also got a lot of hand-me-downs from people. And my mom taught me to shop very frugally. And so as I did those things, I learned how to look and how to dress and how to act, regardless of my circumstances, regardless of where I came from, because it was necessary to be able to do the things that I do. So we worked on that. So I knew how to dress and I knew how to act in situations. And I think that those manners actually still need to be taught so that we can get along with one another just a little bit better. I had a situation yesterday that really challenged me. And I'm going to say it challenged my gentleness. It challenged my kindness. It challenged my self-control. Because the last 48 hours, I have been really under some anxiety and stress. So different situations have occurred, and it really had me on edge. And the people that know me know that, I don't necessarily have a short fuse, but when I get to that point, I'm like, you guys need to just be really nice, because you know what? I've had all I can take, and I can't take much more. So please don't tip my teacup over. And so I was really struggling, and I was really praying, Lord, please help me. Please help me and walk through this situation, because I really feel down. I feel so alone. I feel lost. I'm struggling here. Please help me. Now, today is Father's Day, so happy Father's Day to all the fathers. So yesterday, my husband loves for me to make my recipe of peach barbecue for him. So there's a place called Strawberry Hill, and I'm going to give them a shout out. And Strawberry Hill is near here where we live in Gaffney. There's one in Gaffney, South Carolina. So I drove to Gaffney to get peach salsa that I put in this recipe. Now, it's been 2 years since I have been able to get peach salsa. Now, one of the reasons is because of COVID, and things were shut down for a while, and I couldn't get out to get there. And then when I went last year, they didn't have any. For some weird reason, they were having a shortage of peach salsa. So I couldn't get any last year to make him any. So this year I went to get peach salsa and the ingredients that I needed for this barbecue that I make for him. Well, when I got into the store, my daughter Rachel and I looked around, and we looked around. None of the shelves had peach salsa. They seemed to be out again. So I got the other items that I wanted, and I went to the counter, and I asked the gentleman behind the counter, I said, do you have any peach salsa? And he said, let me look in the back. And as he walked away, there was a woman in there, and she yelled from across the room, I think I got the last one. And then she jiggled the jar at me and went, sorry. Now, I want you to know that what went through my mind wasn't gentle, and it was not kind. I honestly almost blew my stack. Rachel twitched her hand, because she was trying to reach out and grab me before I said something. And then, but I took a breath, and I smiled, and I looked at her, and I went, okay. Now, I'm just going to let you know that if you really know me, that wasn't my greatest smile, but I had enough gentleness and self-control in me to make the decision that I was not going to be discourteous and rude just because she was, because it was very rude the way she handled that. And then the gentleman came back and he said, ma'am, I am so sorry. We are completely out of peach salsa here. So I said, well, does the main farm store have it? And he said, I'm sure they do. So my daughter and I went to eat something, and I cooled off. And then we hopped back in the car, and we drove 30 minutes to their main site where the actual farm is, where they have all their peaches and strawberries and everything. And thankfully, they had plenty of peach salsa there. So I bought 2 jars just to make sure I had another one here as a backup, because, my goodness, obviously I don't know when they're going to have it at the other store. So, I just thought, wow, people have really lost the ability to control themselves, because honestly, the woman had 2 choices. And obviously she thought she had 3, but she really had 2. One of them was to be polite and say, you know what? I got the last one. And since it seems important to you to have it, here, you take it. It's not that important to me. Or she could have just not talked and just gone about her business. So the self-control there was not available, obviously, to her. And I know that we have all been through situations where people have been rude and discourteous to us and not understood that the way they're communicating is not kind. And they may think it's funny, but it's coming across really poorly, and it's making them look less kind or less of a person. It's lowering their standard than they realize that they have. It is to act this way does not serve anyone well ever. It really just does not serve us well. So we have to think about these. We have to think about this. So when we are thinking about it, what is it that we can really do about it? Well, in relationships, it is not okay to just suddenly be familiar with a person and use familiar attitudes and use familiar communications or crack jokes that a person that you've just met isn't going to understand, because sudden familiarness is not okay. That's not okay. We save being familiar with somebody and familiar type communications with people that are in our inner circle. And that doesn't always include your family. When you go to holiday meals or you go to family reunions, because there'll be a lot of family reunions this summer, a lot of them happen. The fact is that most of the time you don't see most of these cousins and aunts and uncles. You don't. So just because they share blood and DNA doesn't mean they're in your inner circle. So it doesn't give them all of a sudden license to be able to be overly familiar with you. That's not okay, because when we are familiar with one another, sometimes we just forget that there are actual boundaries and that we don't need to cross them, because family doesn't mean you can say anything you want to say. It does not mean that. Family does not get a free pass to say just anything. The things that you say because you're family and you think you're family and you think that just blurs all the lines, that stuff can be traumatic to another person. And I just had a student talking to me about that this week. How, these family members that think just because they're family, they can say these things, these hurtful things, or do these hurtful actions, and they either think they're being funny or they think they're being helpful, but they're not close enough to be in that inner circle to be able to even kindly give a criticism. Because when people are in your inner circle and you really trust them, most of the time, those are the people that are kindest to you. And if you're not living up to the standard in which you want to live, those are the people that will call you on it, but they'll do it because they love you and they have a trust relationship with you. That's how that familiarity happens. Now, when you are in these family reunion situations or a business situation or an audition situation, those are formal relationships. So relationships that are outside of your inner circle are formal relationships. And with formal relationships, etiquette rules. There are etiquette boundaries that you need to follow, like using please and thank you and excuse me, like dressing appropriately, like not going into someone's house and just opening up cabinets or a refrigerator because you're looking at something. You go to the host and you say, I'm more than happy to get it, but would you tell me where X is? because it's not okay to just go through someone's house and go through their things. You don't do that. You don't walk around their house and look in their rooms or their closets without their permission. If they're giving their own house tour or you want to know something, you can always go to the host and say, I would love a tour of your home. Would you mind showing me around? You can do that, but you don't cross that line, because these are formal relationships. And in formal relationships, there is no lack of communication. They work well and they are helpful because of the rules and the boundaries that exist among them. And you remain respectful. It is not okay to slap somebody back and hee-haw like a donkey in a formal situation. That's not okay. Now, it's okay to laugh, but it's not okay to invade someone's personal space. When you are in a formal situation, like a family reunion, for instance, you can sit around and chat about old memories all you want to, but there are rules. Like, let's not talk about religion. When we talk about religion, we start getting into situations that can be very personal to people, and people have their own beliefs. And so therefore, sometimes we can step on toes and be very offensive. So don't talk about religion. Just leave it out. You don't need to talk about it. Don't talk about politics. Leave it out. You don't need to know where they stand or how they voted. Leave it out. You don't need to express your opinion about the President of the United States or the congressman. You don't need to do that in those situations. You leave that for inner circle private talk. But you do not do that in a formal situation. If out to dinner with friends, nope, don't do it. Don't do it. Leave it out. In a business meeting, nope, don't do it. Leave it out. Those are things that you leave out. Asking incredibly personal questions, nope, not okay. Not okay. Gossiping about another family member or office mate, someone you work with, coworker, nope, not okay. Bad manners. Bad manners. And let's just talk about bullying for a second. Let's just say that you meet someone and you just don't click right off the bat. And you're in a situation where you're sort of trapped, like in a business situation where you've been put on a project with somebody that you guys just don't jive. Well, it's business. You are in there for business. You have that in common. So how about just doing your dead level best to finish the project and get along? Don't go to other coworkers and complain about it, because that's rude. If you have the problem, then you approach the person with kindness. You do that between you and them. If it's not going to be resolved, then you ask for a meeting with your boss privately. That's how you do it. That's the professional thing to do. In these situations, we need to leave emotions out and just keep on topic. That's just common courtesy and things you need to know. Don't yell across the room at somebody, especially in a restaurant. That's bad manners. If you need the server, you can ask the server closest to you to bring your server politely. And how about finding ways to be complimentary, even if the server isn't as great as you wish them to be? If they're extremely rude because of their own issues, you don't have to get extremely rude back. You can just simply ask another server to bring the manager over and allow the manager to handle it. You don't have to get into some big conflict and ruin the dinner that you're at. That is, those are just things that aren't okay. If you don't get along with somebody and you're at the same table with them and they're a friend of a friend and you don't get along with them, smile anyway. It's only a dinner. It is only a dinner. You do not have to stay. You can always leave. You can always just eat and say, this is wonderful, make your excuses and leave. But be polite and remember to say, it was nice to meet you. You might not have had a pleasant exchange or a pleasant experience, but at least acknowledge the person and say it was nice to meet you, because now you know that's just not a person that you want to be around. And if your friend wants to invite him again, just simply say to your friend, if they're a real friend, they're going to understand and say, you know what? I didn't really feel comfortable around them the last time, but if you want to go out to dinner, you do it. And let's choose another day that just you and I can go. That's how you can handle it. You don't have to make a big deal about it. And you certainly don't have to be rude or make the other person uncomfortable just because you don't like them. Sometimes it's best just to keep your feelings and opinions to yourself. Don't ruin a vacation or a dinner or a weekend just because you don't like somebody. It's a limited amount of time. I'm pretty sure if you're an adult, you can handle it. Because the childish stuff needs to just stop. It truly needs to just stop. Now, if you were out and about and someone is rude, like at a grocery store line or anything like that, we just run into things all the time now. People are so on edge. We really have to practice at home privately how we're going to respond when we go out in situations, just like the situation I was in yesterday. The rudeness of the woman tempted me, but I had already made a decision that I'm not going to show some side of ugliness just because somebody else doesn't know how to handle themselves. And that's what we have to remember, to leave the emotions aside, especially when it's somebody that we don't even know. And it seems to me the more our time goes on in this life right now and in this culture, the more etiquette and courtesy gets thrown out the window. When you go to an audition, you need to remember that you're going there for a job interview. When you go to a job interview, you need to remember that this is a place that needs respect and you're wanting a job. When you go to an audition, it's the exact same thing. It's the exact same thing. It is not okay to intimidate your colleagues that are there. It is not okay to do nothing but tell your resume. As I'm here to tell you, as somebody that has sat in so many audition lines, I have heard so many people blowing up their own chests over their own resumes. Well, I did this last and I did that and I worked with this director and I worked with that director. And you know what? Nobody cares. You're there to sing and nothing else. You need to concentrate on what you're going to do in your own audition and just leave those of us in earshot out of your intimidation tactics, because the only reason you're doing that is because you're scared. We're all nervous. We're all wanting the job when we're in that line. We truly are. But at the same time, if you really have some self-control and you really want the job, you'll focus all of that nervous energy on what you need to do to be your best self. And you won't break in to somebody else's private time when they're trying to concentrate on what they need to do and to keep themselves together. Being professional means you always have your music there. And being polite and kind means you always have it marked for your accompanist. You always walk up to the accompanist, thank them for playing. You always communicate clearly with them because they're your best support system in the room. You always walk in with a smile and with energy. You greet the person that at the sign-in desk with smile and energy and thank them for being there that day. These people are there to help you and help support you. And singers, you know what? Don't go into the bathroom or the hallways or the stairwells just because, oh, that's great acoustics and I want my voice to sound bigger and everybody to hear it, because we don't appreciate those intimidation tactics either. That's not okay. And honestly, that's coming from your own insecurity, and it's impolite. Find a private place that nobody's around. Go back to your car if you need to, but do your warm-up routine that way, away from everybody, because that's the polite thing to do. If you come out of the audition and you did not do well, don't talk about that until you leave the building, because others are there nervous themselves, and they don't need to hear your problem. Remember that you're not the only one there, and it's not all about you. So that's just something that you need to remember all the time. And I think that's something that we all need to remember, that we want to be treated well. So we want to treat others well too. We want to say thank you for your time. We want to say congratulations to everyone when we don't win, even when it's hard, even when we feel like crying. We can go and show our tears somewhere else, but not in that situation. We just got to think about how we can treat ourselves better so that we can treat others better. Because most of this impoliteness is just coming from the fact that you don't like yourself that much. Plus, parents, please teach these things to your children. Pass it along. Pass it along. Behavior matters. Character traits matter. And this is just the responsible way to act. It truly is. If you want to be loved and you love yourself, then you will love somebody else. And you will show love to somebody else. We don't always have to be belligerent. We don't always have to be argumentative. We don't always have to get our point across. We really can support one another. We really can build a culture of support and love and encouragement. We can build the culture and the society that we want to have. And we can start by treating others well and remembering that we make a difference out there. We can shine our light out there. That is probably the most important thing that we can do. And sometimes we just need the tools to remember how to do it. Because sometimes we get weary and we get snippy and somebody is rude and then we snap back. There was one day, and this was several years ago, there was a coffee shop here in town, and I sure do miss it. Anybody that remembers the Broad River Coffee Shop here in Boiling Springs, you know how much we miss that coffee shop. So we miss having a real coffee shop here in Boiling Springs. Anyway, one day I went in there and I had a bad day, and they were out of the drink that I wanted. And I snapped and made the comment to the poor barista, well, sounds to me like nobody's planning their orders well. That was really rude. And she stayed kind. And she handed me my drink and said, have a good day. And then later on, I went somewhere, and as I was driving, I thought, Crystal, shame on you. That was inappropriate. And she did not deserve that. So when I finished my appointment, I went back and I walked in, and she was still there, and I apologized. And I said, I am so sorry. I was so rude, and it wasn't about you. And I just was, when you were out of the drink that I wanted, it was just the last straw that day. And I just felt like I wasn't going to be able to win no matter what I did. And I took it out on you, and I apologize. I hope you can forgive me, because I come in here all the time, and I don't want to represent myself as that type of person. And she looked at me and she said, you're one of the first people that has ever come back and taken responsibility. And I said, well, I try to be a person that will. But how sad that it is a rarity that somebody comes back to apologize and take responsibility for their bad attitude. That is so sad, because no one in no kind of job, no matter what the job is, deserves to be treated poorly because we have forgotten our manners, because we have forgotten our self-control, because something pushed us to the brink, and so we just decided to aim it at that person. That's never an okay attitude to have. And I'm just being really honest, because I fall out of this all the time, and I have to really catch myself, and I have to really have a talk with me about how I want to represent myself. And it's something we all can trip up on, but it's also a way that we can build and make a better world, and make the world that we dream to have around us. Because shouting back at somebody because they're rude, and you go, hey, you know what? I don't deserve for you to be rude to me. And you're right, you don't. But is that the way to teach them not to be rude? And we have to think about that. We really have to think about that, because it is so much better to be encouraging and find a way to smile and find a way to keep our heads up and take responsibility for our attitudes when others cannot. That's something that we need to work on. I hope this has helped you today. I hope it's given you some food to really think about. I hope it's given you some tools that you can use to help yourself just think more about kindness and etiquette and self-control, and using please and thank you, and being more patient with other people, and remembering that we need that common language, that manners and good etiquette brings us all on an even plane, so that we can have something in common, because that really does touch another person's heart. And that's the greatest possible thing that we can do, if we can communicate to someone in a way that touches their heart. That's all I have for you today. I hope you go and find a way to touch someone's heart this week, because I'm going to be looking for a way to do just that. Remember, the Naked Singer drops on every Monday, and it's available on all your favorite podcast networks. And I would love for you to come on board. Make sure you follow me on Instagram at Naked Singer Blog. Make sure you follow me on TikTok, because I try to post something every day that's helpful, and a little snippet from the podcast to be helpful, and little tips. So you can find that on TikTok at The Naked Singer. You can follow us on Facebook at Naked Singer Blog. And as always, we've gone way over 300 downloads. So we're still working hard to get to 1,000. And make sure you follow, share, and like this podcast because we could use all the support that we can get. Don't forget that I love you. And as always, I'm Crystal McDaniel, and this is The Naked Singer.